Yeah, please. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Lula's back. Guaido's gone. What a week. As you can tell, I'm joined by Eleanor Goldfield,
Hello.
and we are doing a super special episode. We always do them from hotel rooms. This is like, holy shit, it's happening.
In a
Hotel room.
Well, it's
With
because we go to these hotel rooms to buy drugs, and then we figure
Right.
we might as well just do a live stream while we're here,
Right.
for
waiting for the drugs to arrive. Yeah, it's usually like that.
something to do.
And as you can tell, some bizarre wallpaper here, which makes me
It's
feel
called
like
an accent
it,
wall.
it makes me feel like giant spiders are over my shoulder.
They're like dandelion type things, aren't they?
Dandelions, they'll eat a human, eat an adult man.
I'd like that. Revenge of the Dandelions.
They finally get their revenge. All right, so yeah, let's go into. Please ignore the hotel room, and let's go into how Lula has just been inaugurated. Lula da Silva, he's back after 2 U.S.-backed coups, successfully got Bolsonaro into the presidency. You had the one against Dilma Rousseff, who was Lula's predecessor? No.
Possessor?
Possessor. I was going to say commandant. No, I don't. And then I think Lula was kind of her mentor, but I could be incorrect about that. But they took her out, and then with a coup, and then they got Lula arrested, which later was overturned, but it served its purpose. It put him in prison while Bolsonaro was put into the presidency. Bolsonaro, of course, being a far right-wing fascist piece of shit who supported, endorsed the killing of indigenous, endorsed the deforestation, burning of the Amazon. He's done so many horrible things. It would take too long to list them all. But yeah, so this week, Lula got inaugurated, and Bolsonaro fled to Florida. 2 days.
Like you do
when you're corrupt.
Well, I mean, the Cuban elite after the Cuban Revolution, they fled to Florida.
Right.
The Venezuelan elite also fled to Florida. Florida is just like this. It seems to be like a dumpster for all of the corrupt right-wing assholes that flee Central and South America, and so it makes sense that Bolsonaro would end up there.
It is. It's a dumpster, but it's also a lawless land, I feel. That doesn't mean there aren't good people in Florida. I'm sure we have people in Florida watching right now. I'm sure you're wonderful, but there can be wonderful people in a lawless land. I mean, you can. Did you know you can play wiffle ball with an alligator, baby alligator, as the bat in Florida? That's legal.
You know this from experience.
Oh, I was one of the best. But yes, it's like a lawless land, and Bolsonaro was like, if there's one place they're not going to get on my back for corruption, it will be Florida.
I mean, look at the governor, let's be honest.
So he left 2 days before the inauguration because he was afraid that if he actually stayed to do what is standard, which is hand it over to the following president, he was afraid if he stayed to do that they would have him arrested on that day.
Which is funny because I do recall him saying that the only way that he was going to leave office was if he got arrested.
Yep.
I guess not, buddy. I guess when push comes to shove, you're just a little too scared, which is always the case, right? These right-wing assholes always make it sound like I'm so principled and I'll go to jail for this. And then they're like, actually, no, I don't want to. I'd rather go eat burgers in some Sloppy Joe, Florida fucking drive-through.
It's so true. They're like, you could have this presidency when you pry it from a cold dead hands, and then they're like, I'll see you.
Yeah,
I gotta go. The helicopter's leaving. I need to get on it. One of the most surreal experiences I feel like of the entire Trump presidency was seeing him leave on the helicopter or the plane or whatever with YMCA playing in the background.
Which nobody mentioned.
No, I feel like I was the only one who was like...
I felt like I was taking crazy pills. I was like, why is no one talking about this soundtrack right now?
I think it's because it was his standard soundtrack, believe it or not. YMCA is always played at his events.
But that's
and
also...
the other journalists, quote unquote, mainstream media aren't journalists,
The
but
talking heads.
the other people, they found that to be normal. Oh yeah, that's a song he always plays. But to see a president fleeing, but while claiming the election was not lost, and then in the background is young man, it's a place you can go, hey young man, or whatever the fuck, was just so dystopian.
It's just so surreal. Still to this day am not okay with the fact that no one talked about it.
I talked about it.
You did, but no one else did, and I was like, why? What the fuck? Anyway,
so I don't know if Bolsonaro fled to like, dude looks like a lady or something, but Lula da Silva's returned as president of Brazil. Meanwhile, the far-right leader fled to Florida, fearing legal repercussions. Lula's speech before Congress stressed that everyone has the right to a dignified life without hunger, with access to employment, health, education. He said his life mission is to guarantee that every Brazilian has 3 meals a day. As president, so crazy, right? So horrifically socialist is what that is. Guaranteeing
That's dangerous.
Guaranteeing meals for people. Ugh, the worst. As President Lula stressed that he is a representative of the working class, and he's a former union organizer, I believe, who promotes economic growth in a sustainable way and to the benefit of all, especially those most in need. He committed himself to the widest social participation, including workers and the poorest in the budget. And he said, our first actions aim to rescue 33 million people from hunger and rescue from poverty more than 100 million Brazilian men and women who have borne the hardest burden of the project of national destruction that ends today.
Well, I hope that he's correct.
Yeah, I was correct as well. By the way, Brazil's stock market went down a great amount.
If you needed any more proof that capitalism is not for people.
At the announcement of the fact that they were going to get rid of poverty.
Mm-hmm.
The stock market went down, which tells you a lot about how our stock market and Brazil's stock market, they work essentially the same. How capitalism works. If you announce that you're going to end severe poverty and make sure everybody has a meal, and the stock market does very poorly because of it.
Yeah. That's how capitalism do. I've also seen, I mean, all of this remains to be seen, of course, but I've seen some reports that indigenous groups in Brazil are also, they're hopeful about Lula's presidency, particularly with regards to the Amazon, either through tribes that are, that live there, or particularly uncontacted tribes. Sorry, I was searching for that word.
Yes, there are, I believe, 2 tribes that remain essentially uncontacted, which is amazing. And I wish they were able to live their lives unabused by the rest of us.
But so the hope is that a lot of indigenous groups are hopeful that Lula will be good on his promise to reverse Bolsonaro's horrific record on everything from mining to big ag to, and all of these things are pushing deforestation and the destruction of ecosystems in their entireties. So a lot of indigenous groups have said that they're hopeful, but of course these things remain to be seen. And I think that we should also not just assume that Lula is going to be this wonderful leftist president. We need to be in support of the Brazilian people who are pushing for leftist and progressive policies, and not just assume that Lula's going to.
Yeah, and I acknowledge that I'm not Brazilian. I've actually never been to Brazil. I do have a Brazilian though, and and I have heard that many on the left, or consider themselves leftists, view Lula as basically a left-wing liberal. He's not. He's more left than you've ever seen in the United States in the presidency, but he's not like he's not Che Guevara or something. And I think that needs to be acknowledged. While at the same time, also, I think people are confusing things if they think he's no better than Bolsonaro. It's like, no, he is better than Bolsonaro. So it's a different system than here in the United States. But just some last quick points. Lula helped co-found the BRICS bloc, which many of you know about that. That is
another reason why the U.S. hates him.
Another reason the U.S. hates him. That is the Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa bloc that is basically a competitor to U.S. global hegemony. They are the largest competitors. And of course, we've seen the ramp up of the U.S. power conflict, as we call it, including the proxy war in Ukraine. Lula called for strengthening of BRICS in his speech. And Bolsonaro, this is from Multipolarista, they make the point Bolsonaro only came to power in the first place due to 2 U.S.-backed coups against Brazil's left-wing Workers' Party, the overthrow of President Dilma Rousseff 2016, and the imprisonment of Lula in the lead-up to the 2018 election on false charges that were ultimately overturned and was condemned by the UN Human Rights Committee. Soon after he entered office, thanks to U.S. meddling, Bolsonaro visited CIA headquarters. He also dedicated himself to sabotaging institutions of Latin American integration, withdrawing Brazil from UNASUR, UNASUR, so that's pronounced. So, yeah, good guy. I hope he's having some good fast food in Florida. So that happens in the same week that our buddy, our pal, fan of the show, friend of the show, Juan Guaido.
2023 is off to a good start in a lot of
ways. It is. This is off to a good start right here. So this is from the New York Times. So as I go through this, I don't know, I'm not going through much of it, but as I go through it, I will also point out the lovely propaganda from the New York Times. But this is the New York Times talking about how Juan Guaido has been voted out as leader of Venezuela's opposition party. The vote to terminate the interim government, which it never was, it never was an interim government, signaled that members of the opposition had lost faith in Mr. Guaido's ability to oust President Nicolas Maduro.
Now that's interesting because
it is, isn't it?
How can you oust a president if you're already president?
I'm glad you brought that up. That is interesting because the New York Times and our president and our government and our Congress, in fact, all of them stood and applauded Juan Guaido, standing ovation at one of Trump's States of the Union, and all of them told us Juan Guaido is the president. So how is it the opposition, his opposition? Why are they called the opposition if they're in the presidency? B, how can they lose faith in his ability to oust President Maduro if President Maduro is not president? Please, anyone. Would anyone like to answer that? New York Times.
Riddle me this.
New York Times, your hand is raised. Go ahead. Here's the thing. Never was president. Never received, here's another fun fact, never received a single vote for president of Venezuela.
80% of the Venezuelans didn't even know his name when the U.S. just decreed that he was the president.
It'd be like some obscure congressperson that you didn't know their name. I could say one like Mitch McConnell, Kirsten Sinema or something, but you know their names. So I don't know if people want to throw out someone that has literally done nothing. No one knows their name.
Some guy from like Nebraska or some shit.
And
Nebraska.
And Russia or Iran or something just declared was like that. Yeah, they're now the president of the United States.
Yeah, like that.
And then had the ability to steal the money that was outside, billions of dollars that was outside of the U.S. In this case, it was billions of dollars in the Bank of London, Venezuela's money. Steal that money and give it to this congressman you've never heard of.
Yeah.
So, but yes, even his opposition party has now said
over it.
They're done with him. The opposition legislature in Venezuela voted on Friday to terminate its interim government, ending the leadership of Guaido, who for years had served as the face of resistance to the country's authoritarian government. Here's that old New York Times propaganda. Venezuela has a far more legitimate election system than we do here in the United States.
They actually allow international observers, unlike the United States.
That they do. They also allow people to vote in a way that is not just pushed into a black box that you never see what happens to your vote. It just goes off into ether, and we all have to trust the patented code that tells you whether your vote counted or not.
Trust Big Brother.
So the New York Times then continues, the vote was a blow to the U.S., which had steadfastly backed Mr. Guaido.
Which, should we pause here to point out, you have no fucking right to back anybody in a foreign election. So New York Times, again, riddle me this. If you're so obsessed with election meddling when it comes to the US, which obviously you're not, because then there would be plenty of people to point the finger at, do you not see something wrong with this? Or, oh, it doesn't matter because it's a different country and it's a country of brown people. And so then it's the right of the United States, thanks to Manifest Destiny and the Monroe Doctrine, that we're allowed to do this. That's totally fine.
Absolutely true. And I'm glad you brought up the idea of brown people, because actually in Venezuela, there are darker and lighter skinned people in Venezuela. And the darker skinned people are the ones generally that support Chavez, and Chavez and Maduro are both darker skinned. And Guaido is fairly darker skinned as well, which is why he was selected to be the face of this opposition. Whereas most of the opposition, if you actually see a photo of the opposition with Guaido, most of them are very light skinned, which is the skin color more common with the oligarchy. Now, of course, this is not 100%, just as it's not in the US. You could have someone like President Obama, who represented our white supremacist bombing of black and brown countries endlessly. So this is not 100%, but there is actually a racial dynamic of the oligarchy versus the more indigenous related people in Venezuela, or descended people in Venezuela. And in this case, not only is there socialism in power, but there's also the generally darker skinned indigenous in power, which the U.S. does not like.
And Guaido actually referred to himself as Spanish. He wouldn't refer to himself as Venezuelan. So
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Last little part here. The vote was a blow to the U.S. It was the second and final vote this month to determine the fate of the interim government, which is not an interim government, whose influence has waned in recent years as President Nicolas Maduro has held on to power.
It would be like saying that, not even Biden, because he wasn't democratically elected. It'd be like saying that, Macron has held on to power. Well, yeah.
Right.
Because that's how long his term is.
Right.
You wouldn't that's fucking dumb.
They use these phrases to make you think that it's a dictator, to make you think that there are no elections. One of them is held on to power. Another one is regime. In any country we disagree with, it's a regime, whereas they don't say the regime in Israel. And another one I liked is when Guaido was calling for a coup, he was trying to get the military to support him instead of supporting Maduro. They said, the New York Times ran with articles that said military loyal to Maduro or something like that. And it's like, when was the last time we heard the U.S. military called the military loyal to Biden? But they want you to think that this is some kind of dictator who has some sort of evil, dastardly control over people. But this is an elected official
far more
who has a military
than we have.
And also, something went on with Guaido that would never be allowed to happen in the United States.
Oh my God.
Guaido was announced president of a country he'd never been elected to, got the support of a foreign entity, then repeatedly called for that foreign entity to invade his country. He wanted the U.S. to invade. The U.S. luckily held back from that, except for the Bay of Piglets bullshit. But in general, didn't invade. But also, he called for the military to rise up as a violent coup and take over the country. Imagine if a low-level House of Representatives representative called for the military to join him in taking back the presidency and go in and assassinate the rulers and Would we allow that person to continue to walk around free in the country on TV? Fucking no. That guy would be arrested.
Oh, he'd be in a black site before he got to finish his sentence.
And then he never finished his sentence. Because he'd be sentenced to life. It was a sentence joke on sentence. It was actually wordplay about the word sentence, which is pretty. It's like funny on like so many.
That is very meta.
So many levels. So meta.
I'm so sorry I said anything.
All right, let's get on to the next story. We're moving on to something that Exxon and the other big oils have done, big oil companies have done, that it's just really cool and awesome and just really world loving. World loving. I'll call it world loving. That's what I'm saying.
I like it. It sounds like something that would be on a vision board or something. Okay, so first of all,
sorry, I got another word joke. Is it fascinating that I'm always bored when people bring up vision boards?
Huh. No, I think that's about right.
Okay. Just making sure.
I also, never mind. That's a separate story. Okay. So this is an article that is actually quite interesting to read. And I'm also intrigued by the fact that it's in Bloomberg, which we had a conversation about this.
Yeah.
Where you were basically saying it's kind of like a limited hangout type situation where they'll like let the release valve of the evils of capitalism shine through without ever actually calling it that. Like they're obviously not saying that this is just a necessary piece of the destructive force of capitalism.
I see it as two possibilities for why Bloomberg would do this. Sometimes Bloomberg and some other outlets like Business Insider will do a story that I'll actually be like, wow, this is a good story. And it's because literally they just want the clicks. And they know that sometimes revolutionary stories are stories, that undermine the police or, reveal the crimes of the police or that kind of thing. Sometimes they'll be like, this will get a lot of clicks, and they want the fucking clicks. So that they do that sometimes. And the other reason is literally there can be powerful people who are shorting big oil. They're making money if big oil stock goes down. And so it's possible that an article like this gets published because they're hoping it will harm big oil enough that their shorts will be worth a lot. That they'll have some high-priced shorts.
High-priced shorts. Yeah. Which, if you don't know what that means, that could possibly even be funnier. Well, we won't get into stock market jargon, but anyway, so basically, this article is talking about an organization called the Alliance to End Plastic Waste, which I think is adorable. And I agree with the concept, the name of that. But like so many other front organizations, which this really is, it's all bullshit. It's all for show. And this article outlines that in particular...
then how can they name themselves that if they don't want to end plastic waste? That is not fair.
I'm so glad you asked, Lee. So it's basically backed by the American Chemistry Council, which sounds like something you would have learned about in high school. Like they just print a lot of periodic tables or something. But no, this is it's 77
they
members.
Just dissect frogs all day, every day. They're like, we still haven't gotten to the bottom of the frog.
They are 77 members who include petrochemical producers that actually rely on the creation of plastic to survive as a company. And so you might ask, why is a company that does that, or why is an organization that does that backing something called the Alliance to End Plastic Waste? Well, because
they want plastic to
greenwashing.
Be viewed. They want plastics to be viewed as safer and better.
No, not really, because they're saying that plastic waste is bad.
The waste is bad, but if people start to believe it is being cleaned up,
right,
we can keep using it.
Exactly. And so their work is focused in the global South because that's where all of our shit ends up. Literally, like all of our trash gets sent to the global South for recycling that never actually happens. And the Alliance to End Plastic Waste is like a huge driver of this of this business where this is so depressing, but everyone grab a drink. Only around 9% of the world's plastic is currently recycled.
9%.
An estimated 11 million tons of plastic waste enter the ocean every year.
I'm gonna say that sounds like a lot.
And if people need to take a minute to cry, to punch something, I'm with you. Now, so this organization claims that they're backing a bunch of plastic recycling efforts around the global south. They're not. And if you look at their website, as these journalists report, there's a lot of professionally produced videos that talk about the important shit that they're doing, but that they're actually not. Like they're only currently at like 0.2% of their estimated goal of recycling plastic.
So you're saying there's a chance?
And they're saying
0.2%.
And they're saying it's because of COVID that they weren't able to do a bunch of shit, which is of course a fucking lie. And also like one woman said in Sri Lanka, where there was a horrible basically like plastic spill where they spilled these things like these plastic pellets. A woman said that it's more efficient to clean it up by hand than use this organization's. They have these, so they're doing it by hand. You can see in that picture. They're basically cleaning it by hand, and that's what they have to do. If you scroll down a little bit more from that picture, you'll see these so-called sweepy hydros that look a little bit like something from Back to the Future. And these are the machines that were supposed to do this plastic cleanup, and they're just rotting in fucking shipping containers because apparently they can't dig very deep and they don't work in wet sand. And when you have sand next to the goddamn ocean, you have a lot of wet sand. So,
but even whether by hand or by those silly machines, it seems like this is nothing.
No, exactly.
Percentage of the plastic waste.
But by hand, as this woman pointed out, it's going to take years.
Yeah.
And that's just one beach. That's one area in Sri Lanka. And so this is nothing compared to what they promised to recycle. And of course, as people have pointed out, it's nothing compared to the new plastic that is produced. So really what this organization is doing is it's shifting the focus from the creation of new plastics to recycling. So basically suggesting that the problem isn't that we keep making new plastic, it's that we're not recycling enough. So we really just need to recycle more, but that's fucking not true. The creation of new plastic is incredibly detrimental. And that's really where the problem lies, because honestly, recycling plastic can only do so much because plastic contains so many different elements that are harmful to the environment. So even just trying to figure out how to recycle that without pouring so much pollution back into the environment is damn near impossible.
Right.
So just the idea of just continuously recycling plastic is unrealistic. And yet these companies want to make sure, the ACC want to make sure that we continue creating plastic because that's where their bottom line rests. So this is,
so they want to tell people they're cleaning it up. This is the plastic version.
They're not even recycling it. But
this is the plastic version of the Exxon paper towels to clean up the oil spill.
Right. And there's a guy, John Willis, who's the director of research at Planet Tracker, said, quote, "It's quite actually sophisticated greenwashing. The big oil and chemical companies are basically saying, don't go near production, just focus on the downstream recycling because we're not to blame," which is, of course, again, fucking bullshit.
Right.
And these folks who wrote this article actually went to some of the places that they claim to be bankrolling these recycling centers. And they said one place in Accra was just like a bunch of plastic waste and there was nobody there. There was nobody recycling anything. So there, I mean, it's a front. It's a front group for big chemical groups and plastics creators to say, hey, we're doing something about plastic. We're recycling it.
Right. Not doing shit.
Not doing shit to recycle. Also, that's not even where the problem really is the fact that we continue to produce more and more new plastics.
Seems like a new version of clean coal.
Hey, why the fuck do you get the feel-good stories and I get stuck, we're all gonna drown in a mountain of fucking plastic waste? God damn it, Lee. This is bullshit. I want a happy news story.
All right, next one's happy news. You want that one?
Mine.
Well, I can let you do it though.
No.
No. Hey everybody, if you have a second, please sign up at leecamp.net. That's how we support this show. It's leecamp.net, and it will send you to my locals page. You can also just click the red locals page if you're at rumble.com/leecamp or red locals button, and that'll take you there. And that is how I support this show. Now you can keep going while I finish the pitch, but
that's all I got.
But we have community chats over there. I do a Q&A every Friday, although not this coming Friday, but normally most Fridays there will be there's a Q&A where I get to chat with people, and I also pose questions to people. The question that's up there right now for people at leecamp.net is predictions for 2023. What do you see
Is that your vision
coming
board?
down the pike? That's my vision board. Yeah, my prediction is I'm still bored by vision boards. That is.
What's on your vision board for 2023?
I see myself walking away from you. I see myself slowly backing up. All right, so please become a member at leecamp.net. But let's get on to the next story, which is the very rare moment that a police officer gets sentenced to jail time for their crime. Texas officer who killed Tatiana Jefferson received a 12-year sentence. And this is incredibly rare that a police officer is prosecuted successfully for their murder of someone. A Texas jury has sentenced former police officer Aaron Dean to nearly 12 years in prison for killing Tatiana Jefferson in 2019. Dean shot and killed Jefferson while conducting a wellness check. I bet you she was better before the wellness check than after. And as she was babysitting her 8-year-old nephew at her mother's home, Jefferson's family said they're also pursuing federal charges. Now, it just came out that U.S. cops killed over 1,200 people this past year that just ended, which was one of the highest in recent years. And here's the other thing, though. The 1,200 is actually a low estimate because the Lancet Medical Journal, and this was also covered by the New York Times, but the Lancet Medical Journal did an extensive study and found that roughly half, probably more than half, I think they said closer to 55%, but let's say half of all police murders, people that police murdered in the U.S. every year, is not called a police murder. Because they basically write it down as, breathing difficulty or heart attack or whatever, accidental taser to the head or whatever they put it down as. They don't then go after the cops and they don't call it a police killing. So the truth is that if 1,200 died over this past year at the hands of police murdered 1,200, it's actually 2,400. Thoughts, complaints, concerns?
I am curious why, what happened in this case. I'm assuming probably the wellness check had something to do with it, because in other cases they'll oftentimes claim totally erroneously and incorrectly that, oh, well, I thought they had a gun, or, well, it was a drugs bust, so we didn't know. But like a wellness check, then you can't claim that you thought you were going into, a fucking violent situation. So why the fuck do you even have your guns drawn? So I wonder if that had something to do with it. But I am curious what was different specifically about this that actually warranted a fucking conviction, because that is so rare, as you pointed out.
Yeah. I actually did the math a while back, but I don't remember the exact numbers. But basically, over a 15-year span, and this was mainstream media, so this is not some lefty analysis. This was like ABC News. Over a 15-year span from like it was like 2005 to 2020, ABC News was able to find 3 officers that were prosecuted successfully for murder and actually served time in prison. 3 out of a low estimate would be 15,000 police murders, but actually it's double that. So 30,000 murders. And you have 3 police officers successfully serving prison time for murder.
And again, as you have and I have said many times, and yet there are people serving life in prison for selling a plant.
For selling a plant, sometimes for stealing a candy bar, sometimes for stealing a jacket. There's a guy in Louisiana who's sentenced to life for stealing a jacket or a sweater or something. Totally insane, but this is some good news that they did get one. They did get one. And if I need to remind people, I like to give them multiple layers of reality, the layers of reality that you won't get from other sources, often even other independent news sources. You might get this story about this cop being imprisoned. You might even get the fact that something like 0.001% or whatever ever served time for the murders. And you might maybe occasionally get the fact that it's actually double the number of murders that we're hearing. But what you won't hear almost ever is that this is essentially the largest police state in the world, the largest prison state in the world, the most number of prisoners, both per capita and sheer number. And the real reason the police are there is to prosecute one of the biggest reasons are to prosecute the completely illegal war on drugs, which is a war on our own people by definition, and to protect the class structure of America, to
serve and protect the ruling class.
Yeah. And so you may see cops hanging around, and occasionally they give someone a ticket for loitering, or occasionally they arrest a guy for sleeping on a bench, or what. They do all that shit. But what's the real reason? What's the reason where it's like, oh, game is on, and they show up in their stormtrooper outfits with their rollerblade and knee pads on and all that shit? That's when the people start to stand up, when the people start to protest. That is the real reason they're standing around everywhere, is for those moments. So the state has basically a giant army through the entire country ready at a moment's notice to shut things down.
Also, to circle absolutely to everything that you just said, but also to circle back.
Can I get a fist bump?
Well, I've got rings. I don't want to hurt you.
You can hurt. You can't. Or you actually can't hurt me.
Well, now I really want to punch you hard just because you said that. Don't call the police, particularly not for a wellness check. But don't call the cops in general. But if you're worried about someone, then either check on them yourself. If you can't, call someone else who might be able to check on them. Don't call the cops. That's never. Asking trained killers to go check on a friend who you think might be having a rough time is like the last thing that your friend who's having a rough time would need.
And it's only through from like the day you come out of that hole, immense social engineering. Like from day one.
You're talking about the vagina?
That's the hole I was referencing. Yeah.
Okay.
That's not like a space time continuum.
I wasn't sure if you were talking about people getting out of like jail or something. Okay, I see.
Oh, the hole, yeah.
Yeah, I was like, okay.
Immense social engineering is the only reason we find it even remotely normal that you're like, I'm worried about somebody. Let me call guys with guns. Poorly trained guys with guns should go handle this.
With roid problems.
25% apparently in urban areas are abusing steroids and suffering from roid rage, according to studies. So, like, If that didn't already exist and we weren't told that's normal every day of our lives, you would never accept it. Like if someone just came up to you and you hadn't heard of that and they said, "Oh, you're worried about your friend? You should send some poorly trained guys with guns there." You would go, "What?
That's fucking ridiculous.
That's fucking crazy."
Yeah.
And I talked about it in one of my stand-up acts, but you take something that the police do, like one of the smaller things that they do, like speed limit, and they're in charge of the speed limit. And my point is we don't need cops for 99% of the things they so-called do. But if you take the example of the speed limit, if we as a society decide, okay, we want the speed limit enforced, we want to make sure people don't go above it. If they go above it, we want them to have some kind of punishment, a ticket or something, saying they owe $100 because they went over the speed limit. Okay, great. Let's do something about that. Well, I got an idea. Let's have speed limit enforcers, and they'll have a little vest on, and they'll have a car, and they'll go after them, and they'll give them
a hall monitor.
It'd be like a hall monitor with a little ribbon sash, and they'll go and they'll give them a little ticket that says you went over the speed limit. Here's your ticket. And they wouldn't be cops. They wouldn't have fucking guns because that'd be insane. It's insane. It's like giving. They wouldn't need guns because nobody's trying to kill them because it's just a speed ticket guy. It'd be like giving guns to your mailman. Like. Why would you want to kill a speed ticket guy? But instead, we have taken this armed force and said, oh, any minor, tiny little so-called crime, we're going to send them in to deal with it just so we have them everywhere so they can protect the ruling class at a moment's notice. And they can make everybody know that they're there and they got their guns and they're ready to go at a moment's notice. That's the real reason. And again, that's a lower layer of reality you will not get from even other independent outlets.
That's why you're here.
Well, you're part of this too. That's why we're here. Don't sell yourself short.
I meant that's why they're here. But yeah, you too.
Oh, we looked at me when you said it. You said that's why you're here. You looked at me.
I was whatever. That's why we're all fucking here, okay?
Oh, you meant that's why I'm here is to listen to you.
Well, ordinarily, yes.
All right. The rest of this show is at rumble.com/Lee Camp. It's free to watch over there. Come join me at rumble.com/Lee Camp. That is where we will continue this. I'm going to show the new episode.
Yes, thank you, Cookie 57. It's the global you. All y'all. All right. I'll speak Southern. I'll speak North Kakalaki. All y'all are here because of it. Thank you. Got it?
Well done. Well done.
Thank you.
I'm gonna show.
Now I want a biscuit. I'm sorry.
Dude, here's the thing: is I fucking hate doing these pitches, but I got to do them because this is how the world works. Like I fucking can't. I can't do this show if I don't tell people where to watch it, and I can't. And we can't. And we're not gonna be able to keep going if people don't become members at LeeCamp.net. So I got to say this shit. But every time I try and just get it out in 1 minute, you got to interrupt 47 times. So I got to start over. Be like if I was sitting here telling people to go buy a mattress, and then you had to, as I was saying about the mattresses. Anyway, go over to rumble.com/LeeCamp. I'll be showing you the new episode of the Most Censored News, which just came out. Also, we will be doing a couple more stories as well, so don't miss that. Rumble.com/LeeCamp. See you over there. All right, now you fill the next couple of seconds while I finish this.
Well, somebody mentioned Bojangles, but that's actually not real, like Southern biscuits. That's like saying that like McDonald's is really good at.
I mean, Popeye's biscuits are. I mean, they tear through your system. You will blow up a bathroom, but they taste amazing.
Look, I liked Bojangles biscuits.